All right. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session of CMA Inter Audit. And this paper number 12B, which is there for 50 marks in your syllabus. This is an important element of your syllabus, guys, because along with accounts, which is of 50 marks, you have 50 marks of audit as well. And consolidatedly, if you are going to score good marks in this particular subject, then of course your overall percentage will be higher. So am I audible to all of you? Can you confirm it to me? Because Vedant is saying that I'm not audible. Am I audible to everyone else?
Yes, sir. We are not facing any issues.
Okay, okay. All right. So yes, this session is all about audit. This session is all about how to do audit. And guys, audit is a different subject. Why do I call audit a different subject? Because audit is nothing peculiar. Audit is nothing different like income tax. Income tax is based upon laws of the country and which law is to be followed. How will the salary income be taxed in India? How will the capital gain be taxed in India, etc., etc. These things are related to the law of land which are pertaining to the country in which you are in. However, audit is one such sphere, guys, which is not under any regulation, which cannot be confined to a particular regulation. Audit is usually beyond any regulations and beyond any law, because audit will more or less be same in all the countries of the world. The best part about audit is that it will be same in all the parts of the world. So for example, if I am auditing, say, a hospital, then guys, hospital of India, hospital of US, hospital of UK, hospital of Europe, all the hospitals will be audited in absolutely the similar manner. There is no difference in the manner, the procedure of auditing which will be employed in India versus the manner which is employed outside. So audit is one such field, audit is one such area which is absolutely same, which is absolutely similar across the globe. And audit has got this peculiarity that it is not bound by any regulation, is not bound by any law. And I'll tell you, I'll describe which are the laws which bound some part of audit for us, but majorly audit is all about logic. Audit is all about your common sense. So I'll tell you something. Guys, your mom is an auditor. Sir, our mom is not an auditor. Our mom is a housewife, and she's never even studied audit subject, and she's never even studied any financial course, finance related course. She has never ever worked in an audit firm. She doesn't know how to do audit, so she's not an auditor. My mother is a housewife. No, guys, your mother is an auditor. Your mother is not a housewife. I'm telling you, she's an auditor. So, but how? How is she an auditor? Tell me something. Your mother, does she find out sometimes when you are doing some mischief? So suppose you've not, when we were in school, then sometimes we didn't used to eat our lunch properly, and we used to give away our lunch to someone else. So did our mother used to know about it, come to know about this fact that, oh, today you've not eaten your lunch properly, or today you've not finished your lunch properly? And why only during your childhood? Even now, guys, does your mom know something which you want to hide from her and she knows it already? Yes, it happens many a times. So whenever I tell my mom that, okay, I'll drink milk before sleeping, before going to sleep, I'll drink milk. I tell my mom like this. But when early in the morning, when I wake up, the first thing she tells me is, oh, you didn't had milk. How does she know? How did she know? I mean, there was no proof, there was no source. But guys, she's smart enough. What did she do? She saw the sink, the basin of our kitchen, and she didn't see an additional glass kept over there. If there is no used glass kept over there, that is a proof that I didn't had milk at night. So this is a very simple audit procedure. So that is why I tell you that audit is logic. Audit is not law. Audit is not regulation. Audit is not rule. It's logic. It's pure logic. So suppose you tell your friend, okay, take this 100 rupees, buy a chocolate for me. He goes to shop and buys a chocolate worth rupees 60 for you, and he returns 30 rupees back to you. Then obviously you'll ask him, hey, where is my 10 rupees? Where are my 10 rupees gone? Then he'll be zapped. He'll be like, how did you come to know that I didn't give you 10 rupees? It is obvious. It's logic. It's common sense. So guys, audit is more logic, is more common sense in a practical parlance, and it is more driven by your experience. So more experienced an auditor is, more well he's gonna be in his practical life and in his approach. So audit is about experience. Audit is about practicality, and audit is all about your logics. I'll give you a very, very simple example of how logics are applied in auditing. So guys, I have done audit in one of the big four companies for 5 years. And when I was the auditor of those companies, then guys, I went to an inventory audit. Sir, what is an inventory audit? Guys, inventory audit means that you have to audit the inventory, the stock, the closing stock of a particular entity. You will go there in their godown and just see how much stock is there in that particular organization. Guys, that organization was a chemical manufacturing organization. And I had to see that what is the quantum of chemical which is kept as an inventory, as closing stock in their books of accounts, and what was there physically in their godown. I had to check this. So guys, chemicals are not stored in plastic or some containers. They are stored in big silos. What are silos? Silos are big metallic structures which are engraved into earth, and they are big cylinders which are of height of say 10 feet or 20 feet, 30 feet. They are that high, and these are known as silos. They are earthed properly. They are fixed into earth, and you just can tell how many kiloliters of chemical is there inside the silo. So I asked the management, sir, how many kiloliters of chemical is there in this particular silo? Management told me, sir, we have 10,000 kiloliters of chemical in this silo, and we have additional 10,000 kiloliters of chemical in our another silo. So we show you two silos, 10,000 kilometers in one silo, 10,000 kilometers in second silo. So this was the management's claim that, okay, sir, we'll show you 20,000 kiloliters of chemical which are stored in two different silos. I said, okay, if that is the case, then please show me both the silos. So we were standing in front of one silo, and I was made to climb up the silo through a staircase which is adjacent to the silo. And as soon as I went up, I was asked to peep inside the silo and see whether there is physical quantum of chemical inside there or not. There was chemical. Then I took the reading. There, beside the silo, there are reading meters. I took the reading. Okay, this is the reading. 10,000 kiloliters of chemical was there inside the silo at that particular point of time. I was satisfied. I said, okay, you have 10,000 kiloliters of silo of a chemical in silo number 1. Now please show me silo number 2. As soon as I told them that please show me silo number 2, the management asked me, okay, sir, it's too hot. Can we just wait for some time in the factory? Can we go back to the factory? Just wait for some time, have some cold drink and have some water, and then we can go to silo number 2. I said, what's the problem? Why can't we go right now? Let's finish it up, and then we will, have cold drink or tea or whatever we want to have. Why can't we do that? So management was like, sir, let's wait for some time. Let's do the silo number 2 in a short while. I said, okay, if you insist, we'll do silo number 2 in a short while. So guys, while we were moving from the silo towards the factory premises, and yes, there is quite a lot of distance between the silo where the yard is, where the stock yard is, and where the head office is. There's quite a distance. So while we were walking from the silo towards the factory premises, I saw or I heard some sound, some noise. What kind of noise? Guys, noise of water flowing. So when we pour water, then the kind of noise which is generally heard by us, that kind of noise I heard. Soon as I heard that noise, I just was unable to digest logically. There shouldn't be any water source over here. There's no river, there is no sea, there is no ocean, there is no lake or something like that. So why is there a water noise? Why is there a water sound? There should not be water sound in this particular area. There could be one condition, that the management has some water pumps which are drawing water from somewhere and they are pulling it to the office premises. But guys, office premises was at the ground floor. So this option was also ruled out. Now, I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know why is this water sound coming? And while we were walking towards the office premises, I just told the management, no, we are not going to the office premises. We are going to the second Xylo immediately. Guys, the management was a little bewildered. Management was a little unconfident at that point in time. But I forced them, no, I want to go to the second Xylo immediately. Management refused to take me to the second Xylo immediately. I told management, okay, you don't come with me. I'll go to second Xylo myself. And guys, my thought was absolutely right. Management was trying to cheat with me. How? Management was transferring the 10,000 kiloliters of chemical from Xylo 1 to Xylo 2. It was transferring, it was removing the chemical from Xylo 1 to Xylo 2 just to demonstrate that they have 20,000 kiloliters of chemical. But actually, they did not have 20,000 kiloliters of chemical. They had only 10,000 kiloliters of chemical. So we reported this fraud which was done by management, this overstatement. This is known as window dressing. Window dressing means you have 20 rupees of assets and you are showing in your financial statements it has 40 rupees. This is known as window dressing of accounts. So in this entire incident, I got to know, guys, I need not be a legal expert. I need not be a professional regulator to understand what is happening. I just need to be logical. I just need to be vigilant. I just need to understand what's going on. And audit is all about logic. Audit is all about your presence of mind. Audit is all about your how you perceive things, as how diligent are you, how intelligent are you, how receptive. Your ears should be open, your eyes should be wide open, and everything should be under your control. That is audit. So audit is not a law, audit is not a regulation, but it's all about logic. It's all about practicalities. Okay, sir, we got the meaning of audit now, and let's start the subject. The subject is audit, and yes, ultimately we have to score good, and 50 marks is what this audit has to offer to us. And guys, obviously I'm your teacher, so the first thing which I would like to tell you honestly, so before telling that thing, I would like to ask you, I need some honest answers over here. I'm looking for some honest answers. Guys, how many of you are afraid of cramming, are afraid of mugging up things? They cannot rectify things as it is and yield it in the examination paper. How many of you fear or dread rectification, or you don't know how to rectify and mug up things, cram things, and you find it very difficult to cram things? How many of you find it difficult to cram things? You can write your answer in chat. People who find it difficult to cram things, who find it difficult to mug up things. Okay, Akshay, Prachi, Vedant cannot cram things, find it very difficult. Manisha Bhardwaj also finds it very difficult to cram things. Yes, I find it. This is an honest opinion, guys. So I'm not judging you. I'm not giving you any marks on the basis of this answer, but I'm just asking an honest opinion from all of you. I'm just asking an honest, because unless and until we accept our weaknesses, we'll not be able to work upon it. So unless and until you tell me your weaknesses, I will not be able to work upon it. I will not be able to suggest something for you. Chahat says very difficult. Sarvanan says, I find it difficult, very difficult. I find it difficult. Please give suggestions. Okay, Akash Jain says, please give. I find it difficult. So most of the students find it difficult. So who are those who are really good with mugging up things and good with cramming, and they are okay with cramming, and they are like, okay, so we can cram whatever, we can cram word to word, reproduce it in the examination as it is without even a single change in word. How many of you are comfortable with it? Not many, I guess. Please use English. No, Ujjwal, I cannot use English because there are a lot of students from South, so they don't understand Hindi. So I cannot use English. I have to use English only. That's the problem. Okay, so most of you are finding it difficult to cram, and I got the answer. I got the general consensus that you are really having a tough time mugging up those subjects like audit, subjects like strategic management, subjects like law, which require a lot of mental mugging power. You are finding it difficult and you are having a tough time with those subjects. I agree, guys. But unfortunately, guys, this is also a theory subject. This is also all about mugging, cramming. Unless and until you are able to reproduce the exact language of the study material in the examination hall on the examination answer sheet, unless and until you are able to reproduce it, doesn't matter whether you understand the topic or not, but the most important thing is cramming, most important thing is mugging up. Unless and until this skill of mugging up, this skill of cramming is polished, is to the best of its capabilities, guys, you will not be able to score well in this particular subject, because at the end of the day, howsoever good I am in making you understand this subject, but the reality is that it's a theory subject, and being a theory subject, you cannot help it but to cram it. The only alternative is to cram it, is to ratify it, is to, as it is, reproduce it, because the examiner is looking for the exact language which is given in the study material, the exact words which are given in the study material in the same manner as it is given in the study material. And if you deviate from that language, if you deviate from that particular grammatical sequence of things, then you are bound to not score well in audit. And if you do not score well in audit, then naturally your entire paper number 12 goes for a toss, because out of 50 of accounts, even if you score 35, then you at least have to score 20 marks or 25 marks in audit to get there. And if you are not good at cramming, it will be a difficult task. It will be a really a miserable situation for you, which you're going to deal in this particular subject. And whatever I spoke for last 2-3 minutes is absolutely crap. It's absolutely rubbish. It's absolutely baseless. Guys, before starting audit subject, let me clarify. Let me wave off this particular notion from your mind that audit is pure theory. So many students come to me and they tell me that, oh sir, audit is an easy stuff. We can cram it at the end. You give us 15 days, we'll cram it, we'll mug it, and we'll give the paper. That's okay. We'll not spend our time to understand audit and all that stuff. So we are not going to do that. So we are just going to cram it at the end day, and we'll just reproduce in the examination. This is the mindset with which students start studying audit. And this mindset is absolutely incorrect. So before I start my chapter number 7, miscellaneous audit, guys, I would like to change your mindset today. I would like to change your thought process with respect to audit today. Yes, audit is a theoretical subject, but it's not for mugging. It's not for cramming, because the entire paper of audit is based on case studies. And unless and until you are able to understand the topic well, you are able to get the genesis of the topic, you will not be able to perform well in case studies. Case studies are not direct, they are indirect. So out of 50, at least 20 or 25 marks of your paper will be case studies. If you mug up this subject blindly, if you try to cram this subject blindly without understanding, I am very sure you're not going to gain marks in this particular subject, because this subject doesn't need cramming, doesn't need mugging up. It needs basic understanding of concepts. So just like you grasp concepts in your practical subjects, just like you grasp concepts in your numerical based subjects, you have to grasp concepts of this particular subject as well. And concepts are all related to practical life. They are all related to practical experience. So unless until those practical experience are imbibed by you in your concepts, you will not be able to perform well. So learning number 1, before even we start the chapter, learning number 1, audit is not only about mugging, cramming, etc. If you mug and cram, you are bound to fail in audit. You have to understand the concepts. You have to understand the basic principles of audit. Only then are you going to succeed in audit. So just leave this thought outside without starting this class, outside your mind, that audit is cramming, audit is mugging up. Leave this thought outside your mind. Just wave it off, just scrap it, because it's not the right thought. Okay, sir, we got it. And we are all ready to start our chapter number 7, start our chapter on audit. And we are definitely going to score marks along with. Okay, so please tell how to study practical point of view. Okay, surely Tejashri, leave it to me. I will tell you how to study it from a practical standpoint also. So let's start our chapter number 7, miscellaneous audit. And chapter number 7 is one of the most important topics of our syllabus, guys. And I chose it because most of you had opted for this particular chapter to be discussed in this particular webinar. And if you can see the chart, it shows an astonishing increase in the marks which this chapter holds in the examination. Guys, for past few attempts, this chapter has been coming in for even more than 10 marks. Earlier, the weightage of the chapter was quite less, but after the advent of syllabus 2016, this chapter has increased its weightage. So it ranges somewhere between 12 to 16 marks, depending upon what is the attempt. But yes, this chapter holds a very strong percentage in your examination. So needless to say, this is the most important chapter of your syllabus. Miscellaneous audit, chapter number 7. Okay, so before starting the contents of this particular chapter, let me ask you, what do you mean by miscellaneous? What is the meaning of word miscellaneous? So guys, miscellaneous means some residuary category, some audits which are not the main audit, but a subset of audit, a leg of audit, a branch of audit, or a section of audit. They are not full-fledged audit. They might be some minuscule part of audit. So part of something is known as miscellaneous audit. So of course, in the earlier chapters, we would have studied the main audit concepts, but in this chapter, we'll study miscellaneous audit concepts, which means that we'll study not the whole audit, but we'll study some small parts of audit, some small parts which are, of course, a part of audit, but not a wholesome audit. So in this chapter, we are going to study some small parts of audit. And the first topic which we are going to start in this particular session is the branch audit. So guys, branch audit is a subset of audit, is a subset of the broader spectrum of audit. And what do you mean by branch audit? Before discussing what do you mean by branch audit, let us discuss what do you mean by a branch. So what is a branch? So if you read the technical language of the law, Companies Act 2013, it says that branch office in relation to a company means any establishment described as such by the company. So we have shifted the onus. The Companies Act has shifted the onus to the company. Whatever company says that this is my branch is the branch office. That's it. So the onus is shifted from the Companies Act to the company. So if company tells you that this is the branch, that is the branch office. Now guys, let me tell you in a practical parlance, in a most practical way, what do you mean by a branch? Guys, branch means an extension of the company located a little far from the company, which has the capability of working like a full-fledged company. Let me repeat. It is an extension of the company located away from the company, which has the capability of running full-fledgedly like a company. I'll give you a simple example. So I am into business of trading of rice. I buy rice from the farmers of MP and I sell it over various parts of India. Now, my head office is in Delhi. So I bring or I purchase the rice paddy from Madhya Pradesh, bring it to Delhi, and then disperse it to various parts of the country. Instead of doing this tedious task, I have another option. I had an idea. I thought that let's make some branch office in Uttar Pradesh. Let's make a branch office in West Bengal. Let's make a branch office in Tamil Nadu. And instead of bringing the paddy from Madhya Pradesh to Delhi, why can't we directly source the paddy from Madhya Pradesh to Tamil Nadu, our branch office, and then branch office can disperse it in Tamil Nadu, various retailers of Tamil Nadu. This can also happen. So we gave authority to our branch. Listen, our branch in Tamil Nadu, you please purchase paddy from so-and-so vendor of Madhya Pradesh. Vendor will be decided by me because I am quality conscious. I need to maintain my quality. My quality is my priority. So I tell my Tamil Nadu branch, listen branch, you please procure your rice from Madhya Pradesh, so-and-so vendor, so-and-so farmer, and you source it to Tamil Nadu, and then you sell it to the various vendors of Tamil Nadu, various wholesalers and retailers of Tamil Nadu. This is what I instruct to my branch. Guys, obviously, after my branch becomes an independent authority and an independent person, obviously, initially, they would need my guidance. But after 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 transactions, they'll work on their own. They'll be independent. They'll say, okay, now we don't want your instructions. Now, I'll tell them, okay, you don't need my instructions. I agree. But at least I want to get your audit done. Because I want to know whether you are performing your duties diligently or not. I agree, you work independently. I have no problems in that. But at the year end, I want the profits to be transferred from branch office to head office. Condition number two. Condition number one. Condition number two. I, head office, wants an audit to be done for the branch so that I'm sure that no hanky panky stuff, no window dressing, no siphoning of funds is happening in my branch. I want to make sure that everything is going smooth, everything is going fine. So guys, what is a branch? Branch is an extension of the head office, located a little far from the head office, which is capable of, the branch is capable of working independently. It is capable of working independently with respect to operations. But yes, finance, profits, and all those stuff are definitely the responsibility of the head office only. Okay, sir, we got it. So this is known as branch. Now, let me show you a diagram which will tell you what is a branch. So guys, this is a branch. So there's a corporate, there's a company. There are 3 branches, and those branches have independent employees. Those branches have people, and they are working independently. Now guys, there is a situation, there can be a possibility that this head office, suppose it is located in Delhi, branch 1 is located in Mumbai, Maharashtra, branch 2 is located in Madhya Pradesh, and guys, branch 3 is located in Dubai. So there can be an Indian branch, there can also be a foreign branch. There can be 2 types of branches. There can be domestic branches, there can be foreign branches. So both branches are possible. Now, again, my concern, what is my concern? I am the head office. I am sitting in Delhi. I am the head office. What is my concern? My concern is you work independently. I have no problems in that. I have given you my IP. IP means intellectual property. I have given you the technique of working. I have told you which vendors are best in Madhya Pradesh to obtain the paddy from. I have told you everything. Now you work independently. I don't have any problems with you. What are the 2 things I want to control? Thing number 1, sir, the entire profits at the year end should be transferred to the corporate, should be transferred to the main head office. And number 2, I want auditing to be done. Audit should be done for all these branches, because at the end of the day, my financials, what are financial statements of Delhi office? Financial statements of Delhi office are a consolidation of head office financials plus branch office financials. They are consolidation of these 2 things. So the financials of Mumbai branch will also get merged in Delhi branch. The financials of MP branch will also get in Delhi branch, Delhi head office. The financials of Dubai branch will also get merged in Delhi head office. So I want this audit to be done. So audit will be done in obviously segregated manner. The auditor which the head office has appointed. Now the question is, sir, whether the same auditor has to go to Mumbai. Auditor is located in Delhi. Whether the same auditor should go to Mumbai, or we should have some other auditor. And so the more difficult question is whether the same auditor who's appointed in Delhi should go to Dubai also. Sir, if that is the case, I want to be auditor of this particular company because I want to travel. I want to go to Dubai to get this audit done. Obviously, not in today's scenario, because today Corona is widespread in entire world. So not in today's scenario, but once Corona is curtailed, once Corona is contained, then I want to go to Dubai to audit this particular entity, sir. Please, sir. Now, the first question which would come to our minds would be, who should be the auditor of the branch? Obviously, the Delhi head office has appointed an auditor, and he has appointed a whosoever, chartered accountant, cost accountant. So chartered accountant are doing audit of financial accounts. Cost accountants are doing financial of cost accounts. Company secretaries are doing financial audit of secretarial accounts. So all these 3 things have 3 different connotations. Now the question is, the moot question is, sir, should the auditor of branch office and head office be the same person, or can there be a distinguishing factor, or can there be a distinction between these 2 auditors? Let's find out. Okay, so branches can be of 2 types, Indian branch and foreign branch. Guys, Indian branch, where a company has a branch office, the accounts of that office shall be audited either. Guys, what do you mean by either? Either means an option is given to you. There's an option which is given to you. is to be audited either by the company's auditor. So the company's auditor can audit, okay, sir. So we are, sir, free to go to Mumbai. We are free to go to MP. Yes, we are free to go to Mumbai. If you want to go to Mumbai, please go ahead, go to Mumbai and audit the branch. And if you want to go to MP, please go to MP and audit that particular branch also if you are the auditor of the Delhi head office. So where a company has a branch office, the accounts of that office shall be audited. Guys, that means branch office. Accounts of branch office shall be audited either by the company's auditor. So the company's auditor can go, which means if I am the company auditor, I'm the auditor of Delhi head office, I can go myself to Mumbai. I'll book a plane ticket, air ticket, and I'll go to Mumbai. Obviously, my plane ticket cost, my lodging cost, my boarding cost, everything will be borne by the client. I will charge him because I won't have this expenditure from my pocket. I will charge him. So either by the company's auditor, or what is the other option? Other option is by any other person qualified to be appointed as an auditor of the company under section 139 of 2013 Act. So guys, every company in today's world is cost conscious. Cost conscious means they don't want to spend a lot of money on the auditors, on their movement, on their air tickets, on their lavish stay in hotels. They don't want to spend. So the second alternative which the company can suggest the auditor is that, sir, why don't you appoint a local auditor in Mumbai? So there'll be a chartered accountant firm, cost accountant firm in Mumbai as well. Why don't you appoint some other audit firm in Mumbai and let the audit of branch be done by that particular person instead of you going? Because if you are going, then you will incur flight cost, you will incur hotel cost, you will incur boarding cost, lodging cost. And if you go over there, you would be lured to see the Gateway of India. You would be lured to have a cup of coffee in Taj. You would be lured to visit various monuments in Mumbai, etc., etc. Why are you increasing our cost? Why don't you hire a local CA or a CMA in Mumbai and ask him to do audit of branch and send you the report? So that option is also available. Now, who will decide whether the main auditor will go or whether the new branch auditor should be appointed in that particular city? Who will decide? That is the question. And I want you to write in chat box. I'll give you two options. Option A, sir, company will decide whether the main auditor should go to the branch. Option number two, the auditor will decide whether the main auditor should go to the branch or a fresh auditor, a local auditor should be appointed. So tell me which one of the two options is true. Option number A, company will decide who will do this. Option number B, auditor will decide. So A or B, you just have to write A or B, whether company would decide A, auditor would decide B. So answer A or B. I just want A or B from you. A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Everyone is mixed. I mean, A is company. Piyush Tanmay Chatterjee, A is company, B is auditor. A, Tejashri, A, okay. Now suddenly A's have rush. Both of them can decide. Perfect, Chahat. You've given a middle way. Both of them will decide. Let me tell you guys who will decide. The primary decision-making authority in case of decision with respect to audit is the auditor himself. Auditor cannot be restricted in deciding whether he should go to the branch or whether someone else should do audit of that particular branch. Yes, company can suggest, but it's ultimately auditor's decision whether to have himself, whether he should go to that particular location and do audit, or whether there should be a local auditor who's doing this particular audit. Now, there's one exception to this rule. Guys, if the audit is a non-statutory audit, there's a difference between statutory audit and non-statutory audit. Statutory audit means the audit which is required by law. Non-statutory audit means the audit which is not required by law, and the company itself is proposing that audit because it wants to have benefit of the audit. In case of non-statutory audit, it is the company who decides whether the main auditor should go to the branch or whether there should be a local auditor who should audit this branch. But in case of statutory audit, which is my example, chartered accountant doing a financial audit or a cost accountant doing a cost audit. In this case, the primary decision-making authority is the chartered accountant or the cost accountant himself. Company can suggest them, but cannot force them. So the chart accountant or cost accountant should decide whether they should visit the branch personally. If they think that it's very important to visit the branch personally, then they will visit the branch personally, or they will give this authority to some other auditor. Okay, you do audit and you send us the report. So option is given in law. Option is given in law that both are possible. But yes, you have to maintain one thing, that the auditor who is locally appointed as the branch auditor should be a valid auditor under section 139 of the Companies Act. 139, the qualifications of the auditor should be met by that particular auditor. That is the prime condition. Now let us come on to foreign branch. And sir, we were waiting for this one because we want to go to Dubai for doing audit. We want to go out of India for doing audit. And guys, trust me, once you qualify your CMA and once you become a part of an MNC, you will get ample opportunities to go outside India and to venture out, because today MNCs are the only global firms where global exposure is given to you, and you will be definitely going outside. So don't worry, just qualify your CMA quickly, join an MNC, and you will be auditing a foreign branch very, very soon. So foreign branch, in case of a foreign branch, what will happen? Where the branch is situated outside India, the accounts of the branch office shall be audited again, either by the company's auditor. Again, sir, the option is given. It is either by the company's auditor or by the accountant or by any other person which is local auditor, duly qualified to act as an auditor in accordance with the laws of that country. Now, this is very, very important. Guys, in this case, in India scenario, the auditor, the local auditor, should be the auditor as per section 139 of the Companies Act. In case of global scenario, in case of a foreign branch, the auditor should not meet the criteria of the local Companies Act. It should meet the criteria of the place where this particular branch is there. So for example, Dubai. If you are trying to find a local chartered accountant of Dubai, then guys, the chartered accountancy or cost accountancy course which is there in Dubai, that should be the qualifying person, and he should have studied from their cost accountancy institute and not from cost accountancy institute of India. So that is a major difference between a foreign branch auditor and a domestic branch auditor. Domestic branch auditor has to be 139 approved auditor, and a foreign branch auditor should be the auditor who has been approved by foreign law wherever the branch is situated. So this is the difference between foreign audit and domestic audit. Now guys, the major thing, if there are say two auditors, branch auditor and the main auditor, then branch auditor will say, okay, you take the responsibility, it's not my responsibility. Because if there are two so you've heard a proverb, too many cooks spoil the broth. So if there are two cooks, then guys, both of them will try to shrug away their responsibility, because signing audit is a very, very risky task. So both branch auditor and the main auditor will be shrugging off their responsibilities from their shoulders. They would want to transfer responsibilities to each other. Okay, you do this. Okay, you do this. This will happen wherever there are two auditors. To avoid any confusion, to avoid any conflict, the law is very clear and the provisions are very clear. The provisions are, who will consolidate the audit report? Consolidation means there will be a branch audit report, there will be a head office audit report. Now we need one audit report, so consolidation is the major task. So question is, who will consolidate the audit report? Because we cannot have two audit reports for 1 year for one company. Company is one. Branch and head office, company is one. We cannot have two audit reports. Who will consolidate the cost audit report? The audit report. The branch auditor shall prepare a report on the accounts of the branch and send it to the company's auditor for incorporation in the main audit report. So who's responsible for consolidation of the audit report? The main auditor, guys. The head office auditor has the primary responsibility of consolidation of the audit report. So naturally, if the consolidation is the responsibility of the main auditor, who is ultimately responsible for everything? The company's main auditor is responsible for overall financials, even if branch auditor is appointed. So guys, a very important point over here is, suppose branch audit report is clean. There is no problem in branch audit report. And suppose tomorrow we find out that there was a fraud going on in that branch. The branch auditor failed to report the fraud which was going in that branch. undoubtedly branch auditor will be taken into remand, but the main auditor will also be held responsible, because the ultimate responsibility is of the main auditor. And that is why I told you that the decision of whether the branch should be audited by the main auditor or by a local auditor, this decision is with the main auditor and not the company, because company will try to mislead the auditor, can try to mislead the auditor. So it's all entirely auditor's decision, the main auditor's decision, because guys, ultimately the responsibility of the entire audit, if anything goes wrong, whether in the main head office or in the branch office, if anything goes wrong, it will be the main auditor's responsibility. So who will have the ultimate responsibility? It is the main auditor who has the ultimate responsibility. Next, what is the branch auditor's responsibility? To report fraud. So if some fraud comes into a light of branch auditor, and branch auditor, what steps should branch auditor take at that point in time? Guys, the same steps which company's auditor has to take, the same steps are required to be taken by the branch auditor also. So yes, there's a monetary threshold, 1 crore rupees. If the amount involved in fraud is above 1 crore rupees, then the reporting is to be done to the ministry. And if it is below 1 crore rupees, then the reporting is done to the board of directors. This we had studied in our chapter number 4, which is company audit. So yes, same responsibility which the company's main auditor has, branch auditor also has same responsibility. He should report the fraud to the relevant authority as soon as he discovers the fraud. He cannot shy off from his responsibility of disclosing fraud. Fraud is a serious offense, and fraud is not to be taken lightly. Fraud is to be taken very, very seriously, and therefore the branch auditor. So what can be the other option? Other option can be that, okay, branch auditor waits for his final report to be sent to the main auditor, and main auditor consolidates that report and releases it. Branch auditor can also do this, but no, branch auditor doesn't have to wait for the consolidation part. Branch auditor doesn't have to tell to the main auditor, oh, fraud is happening, you please take care of it. No, branch auditor has to immediately inform that fraud, happening of that fraud, not only to the company, but also to the ministry if the monetary threshold is met. So responsibility to report fraud as applicable to the company's auditor applies to the branch auditor as well. So you need to really understand these 2 points in light of the responsibility, in light of the burden, the work burden which has been shared by the branch auditor. Now, the moot point is, the primary point is, everything said and done, main auditor is the ultimate guy who's responsible for the entire audit. And main auditor will be held responsible in every case, in any and every case. Main auditor cannot say that, oh, I didn't audit this branch was audited by a local auditor, please ask him. Main auditor cannot say this. It's main auditor's neck which is on the block. So main auditor has to be careful in deciding whether he has to go himself to the branch, or whether he has to appoint some local boy, some local chartered accountant, some local professional to audit the branch. Therefore, really important to understand the roles and responsibilities of the main auditor and the subsidiary auditor. Okay, so the next topic which we are going to start is the joint audit. What do you mean by joint audit, and what is the meaning of joint audit? So appointing more than one auditor for conducting audit of an entity, especially big organizations, is known as joint audit. Sir, what is the difference? Even sir, branch audit was the same. In branch audit also we had appointed more than one auditor. Guys, no, there's a big difference. So the relationship between the branch auditor and the main auditor was like that of a holding and a subsidiary. Primary responsibility was of branch auditor. Secondary responsibility was of the primary responsibility was of the company auditor. Secondary responsibility was of the branch auditor. So branch auditor was always one notch below the company auditor in terms of responsibilities, in terms of liabilities. The branch auditor was always below. This was the relationship between branch auditor and the company auditor. Guys, but in case of joint audit, both the auditors have same responsibility. It is not that one auditor will audit a branch and second auditor will be the head office auditor. All the auditors in this case will be the head office auditor. All the auditors will audit the head office. all auditors will have access to the financials of the head office. In case of branch audit, the branch auditor had the access of only branch financials. Branch auditor could not see the head office financials. Head office financials were to be taken care of by the company auditor, the main auditor. In case of joint audit, there is no main, there is no subsidiary, there is no secondary. Both are main. Joint audit, both are main. So, what's the use? What's the fun of having two auditors in the same organization, auditing same set of financials? What's the fun? What's the use of having two different auditors? So guys, the use is big organizations having huge financials, having complex books of accounts, having plethora, lakhs and lakhs and lakhs of transactions in their financial statements, find it difficult to hire only one auditor, because every auditor has limitations with respect to its resources, with respect to time, with respect to the statutory time limit which is given to complete the audit. Everyone has his own restrictions. So amidst these restrictions, there is sometimes a requirement for two auditors who can work simultaneously to finish the audit on time, to finish the audit quickly. That is why joint auditors are appointed. One more reason which you don't have to write in your examination, guys. This reason is a practical reason which I'm telling you. You don't have to mention it in the examination. It's just for your knowledge. So what happens is, in domestic companies who are looking forward for foreign funding which is done by foreign people, which is known as private equity, PE funding. It's known as PE funding. So if there's a domestic entity who's getting audited by a domestic chartered accountancy or cost accountancy firm, if that entity is seeking for funding from a private equity from outside India, say United States, so there is a fund in United States, say fund's name is Bessemer's. Bessemer's wants to invest in Indian firm which is audited by Indian chartered accountant or Indian cost accountant. Now that US guy doesn't know about the Indian chartered accountant, about the Indian cost accountant. So the US guy requests the Indian businessman to get its financial audited also by a big four, because they have more trust on big fours. US companies have more trust on big fours because they are aware about big fours. So they tell the domestic businessman to, okay, get your accounts done by a big four as well. Businessman, the Indian businessman, has no choice but to appoint two auditors. One, his hierarchical auditor, the auditor which was going on for so many years, the Indian auditor. Second would be one of the big fours. This is also one of the reasons why joint auditors come into picture. And usually, guys, joint auditors is a mix of big four and a domestic chartered accountancy firm. Generally, they are a mix. If you see a balance sheet of Reliance also has two auditors signing its audit report. One is an Indian firm, second is an international firm. Again, this combination is really required from a practical standpoint in many of the cases. But as I've told you, you don't have to write this in your examination. This is just for your practical consumption. In examination, you have to write that because of big companies, complexity in accounts, multiplicity of transactions. The transactions are huge. 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 12 lakh transactions per year. And to audit such a wide variety of transactions, it's difficult for any single Indian firm or a multinational firm to audit. So that is the reason why joint auditors are hired. So this is the picture which demonstrates joint auditors. So guys, if we consider this round as the financial statements of a particular entity, this entire pie is the financial statements of an entity. So the joint auditors will distribute certain sections amongst themselves. So Mr. Red will say that, okay, I will audit the fixed assets. So this is the portion of fixed assets. Mr. Yellow will say, okay, I will audit the current liabilities and the long-term liabilities. So this portion, which is blue, is given to Mr. Yellow. Mr. Yellow will audit the current liabilities and the long-term liabilities. Mr. Green will audit the current assets. So the red portion represents the current assets. So the current assets will be audited by Mr. Green. Mr. Blue will take care of the contingent liabilities in the entire organization, and it will audit the contingent liabilities of the organization. So their work will be distributed amongst themselves. So the entire financial statements will be divided into various parts, and we will equally divide the work among ourselves if this is the case of joint auditor. Guys, in case of branch audit, the work was divided on the basis of entity. Entity means head office being audited by the company auditor, branch office, all the heads being audited by the branch auditor. So this was the bifurcation in case of branch audit. But in case of joint audit, bifurcation is with respect to the work which is to be done. The work is fixed assets are to be audited, liabilities are to be audited, current assets are to be audited, long-term liabilities are to be audited, contingent liabilities are to be audited, related party transactions are to be audited. So they will divide their work according to the work which they think they can do best, and this is how division of work will happen amongst all the 4 joint auditors. In this case, I have shown you 4 joint auditors, but 4 is quite a large number. Usually you find 2 joint auditors, maximum 3 joint auditors. Although there's no restriction in law, you can have as many joint auditors as you want, but mostly companies have maximum 2, minimum 2 and maximum 3 joint auditors. So this is a diagram which is portraying the actual split of a joint audit amongst various auditors. Now, of course, there has to be some advantages of this particular scenario, some disadvantages. Guys, trust me, wherever there is a branch audit kind of a thing where the responsibilities of one of the auditor, then that auditor will be very due diligent. He will be very, very careful in doing everything properly. Wherever the responsibility is split amongst various people, they will be bound to become negligent. Even if they see something wrong happening in someone else's portion, they will close their eyes. They will say, oh, this was not my area. My area is fixed assets. I will audit fixed asset. So if they will see any error coming in current assets, they will ignore it. This is bound to happen. So we need to have a strong mechanism to control the responsibilities of these auditors. So before coming on to responsibilities, let us see what are the advantages and disadvantages. So it lowers the workload naturally. Timely completion of audit, time taken is less because the work is divided and everyone is doing their own business. Improved quality of audit because sharing of knowledge and experiences, because 4 people definitely would have more knowledge than 1 people. So they share their knowledge, they share their experience. And healthy competition, which means everyone would want to find out some qualification with respect to their area, and they will have a healthy competition. Disadvantages are ego clashes. So guys, obviously they are bound to fight amongst each other. They might fight amongst each other on silly things. So ego clashes will be there, because ego clashes is not there where there is someone junior and there's someone senior. Where all are seniors, their ego clash will happen. If there is one junior, one senior, which is the branch auditor is junior, company auditor is senior, their ego clash will not happen, because branch auditor knows that he has to follow whatever company auditor is saying. But guys, where all of them are seniors, like in case of joint audit, their ego clashes are bound to happen. Obviously costly, because all of them will charge their separate fees. Lack of coordination between auditors can be detrimental. So if they do not work properly in coordination, in sync, so if they are not clear about what responsibility is to be done by whom, then there is bound to be detriment quality will be compromised. Dispute in distribution of work. Someone will say, I am not doing fixed asset. Other will say, okay, I am also not doing fixed asset. So everyone will fight for what kind of work should be done by whom. Shrugging of responsibility. Shrugging means shying away or throwing your responsibility to someone else. So as I gave you the example that, okay, if fixed assets is my responsibility, then guys, even if I'm seeing that something wrong is happening in current assets, I will not point it out. It's not my responsibility. I will say, oh, it was not my responsibility. To hell with it. So this is the disadvantage of a joint audit. Now comes a very, very important portion, the responsibility. Guys, we need to really distribute the responsibility well. And if we don't distribute the responsibility well, then the audit will be ineffective. The audit will lose its charm, will lose its essence, and we don't want the audit to lose its essence. So responsibility sharing in case of joint audit, and there is a standard on auditing for this particular concept, standard on auditing 299. Guys, one thing very, very carefully you have to fit in your mind, that standard on auditing text is not there in your syllabus. You just have to know the names of important standards. That's it. So if you are studying from some module or some study material where standard of auditing text is also given, it's not relevant for CMA students. Yes, it's relevant for other professional courses students, but not for CMA student. Standard on auditing is not there in your syllabus. It's just that its reference is there in your syllabus. Its text is not there in your syllabus. So I will reference it somewhere. I will use its references, but I will not teach you the text of standard of auditing. So text of standard of auditing is not relevant to you. Okay, sir, we got it. So individual responsibility, joint responsibility. Now I would want to fix responsibility of the joint auditors and the separate auditors amongst themselves, because if the responsibility is not fixed, then they are going to fight amongst each other, and there will be a detriment, which will be detrimental to the quality of the audit. Now, individual responsibility, where auditor's responsibility is only limited to his own self. Individual responsibility is there for the respective work allocated to each auditor. So whatever work is allocated to each auditor, it is their own responsibility. So the work which is allocated to Mr. A should not be, the responsibility should not be given to Mr. B. So Mr. A will be responsible for the work which is given to Mr. A. Now, for some areas, there will be joint responsibility, which means if error happens in that area, all the joint auditors will be reprimanded. In case of the work allocated, which is this section, in case of specific work allocated, if there is an error in that particular work, only that auditor will be reprimanded. But in some areas, in some of the fields, all the auditors will be reprimanded, all the auditors will be scolded if error is in that particular area. So this is known as joint responsibility and individual responsibility. Let's see which are the areas where all the auditors are equally responsible. Number one, work which is not divided. So if there is work which is not divided, all the auditors cannot say, okay, it was not us, not us, not us, not us. They cannot say that. If the work was not divided, then all the auditors had the responsibility to do that work, and the ministry will say, okay, you decide who is to be held responsible. I will hold all of you responsible because you didn't choose your sections well. So work which is not divided, all the auditors will be held responsible. Next, decision taken by all the joint auditors. So if in some of the account heads, the decision was taken by all the joint auditors. So for example, if inventory count was to happen, and inventory count had to happen on 31st of March, and all the auditors agreed that yes, inventory count should happen on 31st of March, then guys, inventory count related observations are a responsibility of all the auditors. So whosoever will take the decision, if all of them will take the decision consolidatedly, then that area will be responsibility of all of them. Tomorrow, you cannot say that, oh, I suggested them that they should do audit on 31st March, but they didn't do. I am not bothered. You have to be bothered. When you took a decision and you told them that this should be done, then you have to be bothered. Then you have to tell them, oh, please do it on 31st March. Inventory count should happen on 31st March. So the decisions taken by all the joint auditors is the joint liability. In respect of matters which are brought to notice of joint auditors, so I told you that if my responsibility is fixed assets and I'm seeing some problem happening in current assets and it comes to my notice, then I cannot waive off my responsibility, guys. I have to be responsible, and I have to find out that why is that particular thing not happening in the correct manner, and I have to inform the person who is doing current assets. I have to inform that person. So in respect of matters which are brought to the notice of joint auditor by any one of them, and on which there is an agreement among the joint auditors. So if any matter has been discussed between two auditors, then that matters becomes a joint liability and no longer a singular liability. Then the disclosure requirements. What are the disclosure requirements? Guys, in the financial statements, one thing is the numbers which come. So fixed assets, so and so lakhs, current assets, so and so lakhs, investments, so and so lakhs. This is the number. Apart from this, there are certain disclosures which are required to be made. For example, fixed assets amount is 2 crore rupees. But on fixed assets, there is a star, and the star is defined as these 2 crore rupees have been hypothecated, which means I have given this as a security to bank for obtaining a loan. This is known as a disclosure. So to obtain the loan of 2 crore rupees, we have given security of fixed assets. So guys, the disclosures are all the auditors' responsibility, whether they are doing that area or not. So the numbers means fixed asset is equal to 2 crores is the responsibility of the auditor who is auditing fixed asset. But this footnote, which is coming as an asterisk, that the fixed assets are hypotheticated for the loan which is taken, this is the responsibility of all the auditors. All the auditors should be vigilant, should be diligent that, okay, the financial statements should have adequate disclosures. Disclosures is not an individual responsibility. Disclosures is a consolidated responsibility of all the auditors who are involved. Then, for ensuring that audit report complies with the requirement of the relevant statute. So the audit report should be perfect. This is the responsibility of all the auditors. Guys, in branch audit report was the responsibility of the company auditor. But over here, audit report is the responsibility of all the auditors. So that is why joint audit means that all the auditors are main. Branch audit means that one auditor is main, one auditor is secondary. That is the difference between joint audit and branch audit. Yes, sir, we got it. Okay, last principle. The last principle of joint audit is that who will prepare the report? How will the report be prepared? So in case of branch audit, the report was prepared by the main auditor, and it was main auditor's wish, whatever he wanted to give in the report, he would give. So if the main auditor feels that the qualification given by the branch auditor is useless, the main auditor can thrash that qualification and not give it in the main report. The main auditor had this power in branch audit. But in joint audit, of course, all the auditors are common. So there is no main, there is no subsidiary, there is no secondary. So all the joint auditors' opinions matter a lot. So the principles of joint audit is that audit firm A, audit firm B, both should give one audit opinion. So there should be consolidated audit report, and the joint auditor should be able to arrive at an agreed report. So there has to be agreement between the joint auditors for all the elements of audit report. Guys, in case of branch audit, the branch auditor could have, the main auditor could have disagreed with one of the opinions of the branch auditor. But over here, one auditor cannot disagree with the opinion of another auditor. One auditor has to convince the other auditor about the opinion, because all of them are main. Sir, what if some auditor is not agreeing to the observations of other auditor? What will happen? Guys, first tell me what will happen in case of branch audit. If company auditor is not agreeing to the opinion of a branch auditor, what will company auditor do? Sir, he will ignore the branch audit report's opinion. Yes, he will ignore, because the ultimate responsibility is of the main auditor. But over here, in joint audit, he cannot ignore. Let's read the next bullet. Where the joint auditor are in disagreement, if there is some disagreement between the joint auditors on any matter, each one should express his opinion through a separate report. So this is the major difference, guys. Over here, we give powers to all the joint auditors to have separate reports if they are not agreeing on a particular issue, if they are not agreeing on a particular point. But in case of branch audit, the branch auditor was not having any authority to have a different audit report. Audit report was one which was prepared by main auditor. Now it was main auditor's discretion whether he wanted to incorporate the suggestions given by branch auditor or not. If main auditor feels that, okay, this suggestion or this qualification is not relevant, it is not material, he can ignore it. But in case of joint auditor, cannot be ignored. They have to be either agreed on one report, and if they do not agree, then they can have separate reports for the matters on which they do not agree. So these were the main differences, or so to say, main principles of two important elements of your chapter, which is the branch audit and the joint audit. So yes, that's all for this particular session, and I'm open to questions. If you want to ask me any questions, then I'm opening the floor now. So I'm opening my chat box now. I can see a lot of chats and messages over there. Will they help each other? Yes, Tejashree, they will help each other. Joint auditors will help each other, but they will maintain the Chinese wall, because there'll be segregation in their duties, in their fields. So yes, that is happening. So why ignorance is in disadvantage? They can, but they must have some ego clashes. So why ignorance is in disadvantages? So ignorance is in disadvantages because we are guys, disadvantage ignorance is because one will not bother what other one is doing. That is the disadvantage will with joint auditor will have.